everyone. I'm just not going to take too long. I just wanted to cover a couple of last-minute things. Often when you go to a conference, you're energised by what's discussed, and then there's silence afterwards, and you wait for the next big thing to come along. We're pretty determined for what we've learned today to go towards something, and there is so much happening already across the whole of South Australia that it would be crazy for us to waste this opportunity. Together SA is going to be writing a report that will summarise today and Thursday's conferences. We're going to take all of the ideas, work out where the common ground is, create a report that's a true reflection of your contribution today. Also, if there's any questions that we think have gone on unanswered, then we will do the research and make sure that's in the report. The report will be distributed to everybody who's here today. It will also be available on our website. The report will become a part of the Junction Australia's bigger report that is going to be prepared for to summarise the whole week of Nigel's visit. So you'll be able to find out all sorts of things that happened at all of the other events as well. It's our intention also to not leave it there, that the report itself is it going to become an advocacy piece as well. It needs to go to a variety of places, selected ministers, but also things like the Human Services Partnership Forum. That's a forum made up of state government representatives and community sector representatives. It's been around for several years. It's going through a change, and they're looking at using this approach to having an impact at population level in South Australia. This timing is perfect for their reiteration of who they are and what their mandate is. Also, for those of you, let me just have a show of hands. Who knows about Together SA? Oh, that's a beautiful response. That's great. I'll let you have an early minute then. So Together SA has been funded this financial year to work with state government to set up something that's called the Thriving Communities Leadership Group. You can see there's a banner there. This Thriving Communities is placed within DCSI. It is their interpretation of collective impact across the state. It's very high on the priority list for our Premier. So we're funded to set up a group that is made up of high-level ministers, executive level, but also people who are actually working on the ground in this space, the project officers, the program managers, the middle management, people who are impacted by the barriers to collective impact and who can see for themselves what is actually working in South Australia and what do we need to repeat to scale up to really have an impact. This group is having its first meeting in a few weeks to look at who can we be as a group? How can we not just be yet another group? And another thing we all come along to and have a cup of tea and a scone and aren't we great? This needs to be, we need to leverage the opportunity that we have with this coming together of people like yourselves, the expertise and experience that's in this room, the lessons we can learn from people like Nigel and Child Friendly Leads, and make the most of this in a South Australian context. So that group, I'm hoping, will become something that is that top level table that can help to bring this to life in South Australia. Even though I'm on co-convening that, I'll be presenting the report to them, even though I'll be writing the report. I'm pretty sure that something positive will happen from there. I guess the last thing that I wanted to say is that it's also a call to action to each of you. What can you do here and now? What can you do differently in your work? There's been so many fantastic conversations I've had today, and I've overheard people talking about ideas that we could do this or they could do that. I'd really love you to think about your own work environment. What can you do differently? Whether it's about working in partnership differently, finding out about one of the many collective impact initiatives that are happening across the state. Together SA has 5, one in Playford, one in the south, Inner West, Inner North and Mid-Murray. I also know that there is one that's being led by the Schools Ministry Group in Whyalla, and also the Adelaide International Bird Sanctuary, strangely enough, collective impact, focused on the community surrounding that bird sanctuary and the interaction between both of them having a long-term sustainable impact on that community. That includes birds. It's beautiful. So I'd really love you to think, can I join that? What can my organisation, what can I do to be a part of that? And if you can't be a part of that, or there's nothing in your area, what can you start? You can be the lone nut, and there are lots of followers in this room who'll be looking out for you. There's nothing wrong with being a lone nut. I've tried it, and you do get some strange reactions, but I think that everybody in this room has the capacity to take the lead and to take that very brave first step. Also, have a look at results-based accountability. It's started across the state. Community Centres SA is taking the lead with building the skills across the state with that, and it's very much embedded in the work of collective impact. And I'm really hoping that as we move forward, we end up working very closely together to create a long-term, sustainable, positive change for the people that we encounter in our work every day. And I look forward to being a partner with you all in that. Thank you.
So we are very much at the end of the day, and I thank you so much for everyone being here and engaging so positively in the day. It has been an extraordinary day of addressing what I call the three social plagues of the 21st century. And Nigel has, in a sense, I think, been the doctor that has come to address the plagues. Those plagues, for many years, I've described as hopelessness, helplessness, and disconnection. And I believe those three things are the undercurrents that have been eating too much of our society away, whilst on the surface we're doing pretty well. Australia is one of the thriving economies and societies in the world, but we have been subject to three social plagues. And today, I think Nigel has reminded us actually it's not hopeless. I think he's inspired us to say there is a way to move forward on some of these very complex issues, but critically important issues. He's also reminded us that we are not helpless. We all have a role to play in moving forward. Our colleagues on the other side of the globe have found that when they work together and they accept the flower of opportunity that is offered to them, that they can in fact affect change. And it's an odd conundrum, isn't it, in this world where we hear so much about connection. We think we're all connected because we're all on Facebook and we're all on Twitter and or whatever else. But there is a loneliness in our society that people feel isolated. And today, I'm just thrilled that I've been able to sit and share community with a group of people who care about important things, South Australia's children. And I want to thank Nigel for responding to an invitation to come to the other side of the earth. It wasn't far away. And we're working him very hard this week. And so in terms of what's happening from here, I just want to give you a bit more context. So I've got a couple more comments to make. One about some of the formal systems and structure things that are happening that I'm aware of, some of which I don't have any particular authority to speak on. It's just my observation of what's happening. And then just close with some thoughts of my own. So in terms of, I think I mentioned briefly at the beginning, last night Nigel addressed a group of what I described as state leaders and change champions. I sent out invitations to a whole stack of people, and we finished up with about 100 people in the Adelaide Pavilion with the Deputy Premier and other ministers involved, business leaders, community leaders, heads of departments, etc., people from philanthropy and community organisations, a lot of CEOs of major community organisations, my colleagues. And Nigel delivered a very similar but shorter presentation that set the scene for change in an environment where the state already knows we're on notice. What we've been doing is not good enough, and we need to move forward with that. And then the change doctor comes in and says, not hopeless, you aren't helpless, and you are actually more connected than you think you are. You all have a piece of the solution. So that was great last night. Here we are today. This is a great interaction today, and I'm really grateful for the way people have engaged in that. It's our collective business to move this forward. And tomorrow morning, just so you get a sense of the momentum that I think is building here, actually I should also say, did you see Nigel dash out in the middle of the session? I don't know what was said in here, but I was holding the phone outside waiting for a call from Sonia Feldhoff, who also wanted to interview Nigel. He dashed out, did a 20-minute interview, and then came back and did the next part of the session. And he did that. I had him on a phone interview with the ABC, I think 2.5 hours after he landed in Adelaide on Sunday night. It's all happening. He is working so hard on behalf of South Australia's children, and they're not even his, they're ours. So that's brilliant. But tomorrow morning, Nigel will present to another group of peak bodies and decision makers in a group that's largely constructed by what's called the Human Services Partnership Forum. It's a group of peak body leaders and key government departments that meet regularly. And so he will spend all morning tomorrow morning with that group. He will, and he'll be going through similar stuff to what you've heard today. There's a lot of similar material, and the beauty of Nigel's message is that it's clear and simple. You know, one shared vision. How many we got? 5 outcomes. 12. What was he? Come on, I'm refreshing here. 1 shared vision, 5 outcomes, 12 priorities, and 3 obsessions. And he's saying the same thing everywhere he goes. It's a clear, simple message, and he'll be delivering that to that group of state decision makers and sector leaders tomorrow morning. They've then wanted to have lunch with him, which he'll do. He's then going to speak with my organisation. We have a staff gathering tomorrow afternoon. I'm sure he'll deliver that same formula. What was it? Shared vision, 5 outcomes, 12 priorities, 3 obsessions. I'm sure we'll hear that again tomorrow. And then he'll do a conference like this on Thursday with another group, very similar. This group, the Northern Conference, sold out very quickly, so I'm pleased that you were here. There's probably others that would have liked to have been. There's a larger conference in the south because it was a bigger venue, and the South Adelaide Footy Club on Thursday. And if you know anyone else that you think needs to go, there's probably still room for them to register. There's not. Sold out, sorry. Okay. So that'll happen, and so I'm just telling you this because there's momentum building here. People are hearing the same clear, simple message. And then on Friday morning, he's meeting with, I think today it was at about 85 of the state's key policy makers from key government departments. And he's going to be running through the important messages once again of the, what was it? I won't do it. The same messages, and he's going to talk about the importance of data and measurement and monitoring how we're going again with that group. On Friday afternoon, he's meeting with the subcommittee of State Cabinet, the Child Protection Reform Subcommittee. And so again, it's with the Deputy Premier, a number of key ministers, and he'll be summarising what he's seen and heard, and I'm sure wrapping up and confirming his message that he wants to leave. And that message overall is, South Australia, you can do this. So it's a really, it's a strong input of encouragement, of inspiring hope, telling us that we aren't helpless. We actually have many of the ingredients that we need as a state to get better outcomes for our children. And we just need to connect up our thoughts and our actions so that we can get those outcomes. So that's what's happening together with those formal systems and structures, perhaps formal in terms of government statutory activities through the week, through a couple of those events, but also together with communities, together with families and communities and children. That's where we come in, that we together can make those changes. One of the things that you missed, but I heard when he was speaking with Sonia today, he talked about the notion of the City of Leeds being like a family business. And I thought, well, isn't that an interesting concept for South Australia? Because our economy is a small to medium-sized enterprise, isn't it? And I think South Australians get the notions of family business, because if it's family business, you make sure that the kids grow up so they can take their part, play their role, don't you? So I thought that was just a nice little, again, another sort of metaphor for South Australia, because that notion of joining up the social agenda of the state, the social plans and development with the economic plans and development, it's all part of the same thing. And I think in our complex society, which we've all sort of been lulled into, we sort of think it's all disconnected. And I'll just do my little bit over here, and someone will also do something else over there, and you hope that something good might happen one day. I think the state is at a point where we're starting to realise that actually isn't working for us. We've got to work a bit harder and join ourselves up a little bit more. A couple of points I just also wanted people to be aware of. I've had the opportunity over the last 12 months, I was invited to be a part of a group called Data for Change. It was established by the Department of Premier and Cabinet, and that was a piece of work recognising that the growing need for collecting our data and using our data to inform our decisions and actions. And I'm pleased to say that after 12 months of that group meeting, the Deputy Premier is pushing a piece of work through government, I think in the next week or two. I think it's gone through the lower house, a piece of work which has he's calling it the Data Sharing Bill, which actually overcomes that glitch that Nigel was mentioning, that everyone's risk averse. I can't share my data with you. So it's now becoming law very quickly, for it's actually a requirement that government departments share their data between each other and ultimately with communities and researchers. So that's a significant shift that's been achieved in the last 12 months. And also, so that's, you know, a statutory change that makes it easier to do the things that we're talking about today. And also, where I think most of us would be aware that in South Australia, in spite of the fact we have the 10 national privacy principles, which have been looming like a cloud over us all for many years, important stuff, but nevertheless South Australia has our information sharing guidelines, so it's actually not only okay, but it's required that we share information to keep children and vulnerable people safe in this state. So I would like to leave you with the thought that we are all, in fact, rather than be the victims of our past, we, all of us, can't eyeball everyone fast enough probably, we are all the authors of this state's future and the stewards of opportunities for children in South Australia. Thank you so much for being a part of today. I should also just mention thanks again to the City of Playford and to the Department of Communities and Social Inclusion and the Department of Education and Child Development, who have been sponsors of today's conference event. But those sponsorships and you made it possible. Thank you so much. Nigel's good at handshaking if people want to see him on the way through, but thank you so much again for Nigel.